And we are live again. Welcome everyone to another installment of Caribbean Developer Week 2018. So far, we're having lots of fun, not just organizing this, but also learning a lot from our speakers. Today, we are going to be talking about becoming a remote software developer with Rohan Anthony Smith, who's quite knowledgeable in that particular area. Um, this is going to be a little different than the other sessions that we had because this is going to be more of an interview style. So for anybody who's looking or watching rather, this one question is going to be really important because this is your opportunity, if you don't already know, to learn about what it takes to become a remote software developer. So welcome, Rohan. Long time no see.
Yes, Lasana, what's up? I'm good.
Fine, thank you. So, shall we get right into it? I have my notes here. So,
Sure.
yeah. Okay, so first, right off the bat, tell us a little bit about yourself, like where you come from, where you're located, whatever you feel comfortable sharing with the CIA, basically.
I'm Rohan Smith, as before said. I'm Jamaican. I was born in Jamaica, but I've been living in Trinidad and Tobago, particularly Tobago, for the past 4 years. I'm a developer. I guess I've been a developer for quite a while, since I left school in 2007. I'm mostly a PHP developer, with focus on Drupal. I enjoy software. I do all kind of different software, but my focus, at least for work, is PHP and Drupal. I guess that's pretty much the basic gist of me in terms of programming.
Now, you mentioned Drupal there, which I do recall you talking about Drupal in the past, and Drupal is like one of the more difficult PHP frameworks to get into, right? It takes a lot of understanding of how it's structured and whatnot, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, I guess because I've been using Drupal for almost 13 years, so yeah. I think I've kind of gotten used to most of that. Learning curve was a couple of years ago. It's still, I mean, we have Drupal 8 now, so it's more learning, but I've been around for a while in the Drupal community, so I kind of understand.
So are you a contributor by chance?
Well, on the third-party modules, I've done, like, contributed to core issues, not code, just more reviewing and testing. But
so you're like an active part of the community, the Drupal community, then?
Yeah, I participate in that.
Okay, interesting. So one of the things I'm gonna ask here, this is not like a kind of like ranking and comparing thing, but just to like understand how things might be different in different parts of the Caribbean. Mm-hmm. Can you compare like the environment in Jamaica to like what it's like in Tobago with regards to like being a software developer?
Well, I think it's probably unfair to compare Tobago with Jamaica, because as with Jamaica, there are parts of Jamaica that have a higher concentration of software developers and more focus. So when I was in Jamaica, I was in the capital. I was in Kingston. So, I mean, all the activity happens in Kingston, right? But if I were to go to, say, Portland in Jamaica, which is like, well, I was born there, it was a rural part of Jamaica. There's far less activity. And Tobago is not the capital of Trinidad either. So there's far less remote software development activity happening here. There are a few organizations, primarily in the government here, that do software, but I've never really gone to them to look for work. So I don't know much how it works here as much.
So there's not much like socialization going on in regards to software stuff.
In Trinidad, I guess, but in Tobago, it's probably in high schools you might find people doing stuff, but beyond that, not much.
Yeah, because I even across here in Trinidad, I often like even with Natalie, I would reach out and I would meet people, including in Tobago. I met a developer who I don't know if he's still there, but he was doing some GPS stuff. I would meet developers all across Trinidad, and it's like nobody ever knows anybody. And same thing, like I went to Tobago, he has his stuff on his site and whatnot, but as far as he could tell, he's probably the only person in Tobago doing software development.
Probably. I know people in tech, though. I mean, there are people here doing their own thing in their own silos, but there's no like community, so to speak.
Okay.
Right.
Fair enough. So, can you talk about any of the like systems or apps you've built with Drupal, just so people kind of get an understanding of your skill and your area or the industries that you serve or anything like that?
All right. So I'm primarily how you call it, a subcontractor, so to speak, when I do remote work. So I'd work for Drupal shops that have contracts with other companies. So I've ended up working for clients like TripAdvisor. I'm currently working on a project with Lowe's. I've worked with a lot of major universities like UCLA, Indiana University, Duke University, Stanford. So I've worked on projects doing their sites. I've lost count. I'd have to like check, but I worked on a couple of interesting projects that require a lot of like serious thinking and programming. So
right, because you have you actually have a background in formally studying. I think it was computer science, right? Oh
yeah. I did computer science up to the master's level. So
right.
MPhil.
Right, so we have somebody on here. I don't know if we asked the other speakers about that, but I know a few of those guys also were well studied in the field, but not everybody goes to that level. So we can have like a mix. So, what would you say then to people who might say there's too much PHP on the internet? Like everywhere there's PHP, like even MailChimp running their whole, setup based on PHP. What would be your opinions? What would you say to people who say stuff like that?
How I always look at it's just solving what's the best tool to solve the problem. So PHP, I'd admit it might not be the most sexy language, right? But it just gets stuff done, right? And the learning curve is easier, and there are systems, there are servers that support PHP. There's just a lot of content out there for PHP, and it allows you to make mistakes, but still like ignores those mistakes. So it's very forgiving, and that in and of itself might have its disadvantages, but it works for beginners, and so it gets people starting solving the problems. And I think that's what programming is about. It's about using the tool to solve your problems. And if your problem is very complex, then you might have to use something that supports that. But for 80% of the things that are done on the internet, you can use PHP for them. So
yeah,
it ends up happening.
Yeah, great answer actually. So now that I should have had like a real nice icebreaker or some kind of thing to like get it flowing. Like ask you a trivia question. Who published the first PHP website or something like that. But I don't have any. Unless you want to know the answer to that. But no, right. So let's get down into this whole remote work thing, right? Now, I myself, I'm a developer. Now you're gonna get some noise from any background. The bread truck is passing. I apologize for that.
That's fine.
Yeah. So I myself, I'm a developer. I started out like professionally. I started taking everything seriously in like 2013. Remote software development never kind of stuck in my mind. I used to work in like accounting before, and I used to hear people talking about working remotely and whatnot. And at that point in time, it always seemed so far and distant from, at least from Trinidad, because I hardly knew of people doing that, right? I'm still kind of ignorant about it because it's not my main thing. Because I realize with the remote development work, the companies kind of look for very specific, as you mentioned, Drupal, they look for specific stuff where my experience has kind of been like, I call it basically digital slavery, where I kind of like take on a whole software.
Generalist.
Well, not even generous, but regards to like the building of the software stuff, I take on like the whole project, right? So I can't really speak much about it. But trying to hear more about it, and I do from time to time get like younger people asking about trying to establish a career, and I actually point a few people towards your site, and I recommend even experienced developers who kind of like fed up of again the digital slavery to check out the remote work thing. So let me ask. Well, first of all, you work? Did you ever work in like? Did you ever do like software before remote work, or what? Did you start off with remote work?
So I actually started out as with my own Drupal shop. So my master's program was a research program, right? So it's MPhil. So it actually gave you a lot of free time, and I took advantage of that to my detriment sometimes, ending up spending quite a while doing my master's. So during my master's program, I started my own Drupal shop where I'd send out applications for, I respond to call for proposals to do projects because I would have recently learned Drupal. And I ended up starting my own shop. There were like two of us who would build websites. That's back in Jamaica. So okay. I never actually worked in an office. Right? I've always worked for myself as a developer, doing my own projects and working with my co-founder. So I always came out of a situation where I was technically working remotely, but with just one other person and the client. So the transition into remote work wasn't as difficult as it might be for someone who's used to going to an office 9 to 5. So I guess that's one advantage I might have over someone who's used to doing that. But I started off coding at home all the time.
Okay. Interesting. So, okay, what kind of what does it take then? Or rather, let me ask this first. What kind of how does a person wanting to become a remote developer, how do they find out, about what's required and the steps they need to take and whatnot?
All right, I guess I could tell you how I got into it. So, I mean, I've always, just like you, heard about remote work. The first was through Elance and Freelancer, and when things will be slow locally, I'd wonder like, how do these things work? So I'd go there and you'd see a project for $500, and I'd be like, okay, that is kind of low. And then I'd apply, and then some people be bidding 300. I'm like, no, like I can't compete, right?
Oh yeah, the bidding was
right. So I never ever got a job on Upwork. Well, Upwork, because I just could never compete with the people from the East, right?
Okay, so hold on, let me just pause you right there. So you're saying you've never actually gotten a job through like Upwork and Elance?
No, I've never gotten a job through Upwork or Elance, and I've tried. I've tried, but I just could not compete with the prices, and it just wouldn't have made any sense for me to price at a certain point, at least for me personally, because at the time I said I was working with clients locally, and I was used to charging a certain amount. So going a third of that just seemed crazy.
Yeah, because I actually have a friend who does remote work, but he doesn't write code. He does like writing and whatnot. And he had recommended Upwork to me. And I more or less had that same experience you had, because when I went there, the length of time it would have taken me to actually respond to these jobs and the amount of effort I would have to do to properly respond. And then you see people quickly responding with like lesser and lesser amounts. It was like it would not make much sense, right?
Right.
Yeah. So go on. Sorry. How you
Right. So
into
I kind of gave up on remote work after that, and then it was actually we had a Drupal meetup back in Jamaica, where we'd have them like every month or so. A friend of mine came and said, he was working remotely. He actually what he actually did, he started on Upwork, but the client took him from Upwork like and started paying him like one-on-one. And told me he was getting like, I think at that time was like $30 an hour. And we were charging our clients the equivalent about $20 an hour. And we weren't getting consistent clients. So I was like, wow, I mean, that sounds like something really good, right? Yeah. So I after that, I went again and I actually went to a Drupal job board. And that's where I got my first remote client. So there were advertising jobs, and they usually have location-based jobs, but this particular one was remote. And the guy accepted, and he asked me to do something, and I did it. I was like, that wasn't so hard. But so that was my first experience. But I still kind of kept local. I applied, but I didn't apply that like really, really hard until the reason I'm in Tobago now is because my wife is Tobagonian, and she was attending school in Jamaica, and she was bonded to the government here through her scholarship, so she had to go back. So we got married in Jamaica, so I started to think, okay, if I need to go back to Tobago, I need to have at least some form of income. So that's when I went crazy and just started applying online. I just went all the job boards, everything I could find to look for remote work. And that's where I got my first like full-time remote opportunity. And it's been going on ever since.
Okay. So basically the process of the need, of course.
Yeah.
as well as not giving up and just going hard at it, trying to get on board, right? So you no longer work like being subcontracted by a company. You actually are a member of staff of these companies.
No, because of how the American tax system is, it's pretty. It's not possible for me to be an employee. I have to be employed as a subcontractor.
Subcontractor.
You're right. What some companies do is that they still pay you the same salary every month as a subcontractor. So it's kind of like a salary job, but you don't get the same benefits. You can't get health insurance. You can't get anything that regular employees get. So you have to operate as an independent contractor.
So okay, then help me understand that a little bit then, because I always equated it to just basically being an employee from another region. But as you rightfully said, especially with all the recent tax legislation we had, it's going to be a kind of hairy issue. So you are a contractor working for a remote company. Can you talk a little bit about, I guess, how to put it, like some of the freedom or restrictions that grants you in terms of your relationship with the company? Because, for example, I'm guessing if you're a full-time staff member, you obviously can't go and write code for other companies, right? Would those same restrictions kind of apply, or how does that work?
No, there are no restrictions in terms of your what you can do as a subcontractor. It's basically you're an independent contractor who works for me full time. That's pretty much the only caveat is that you can't steal their clients.
Of course.
Right. So otherwise, once you're completing the hours, I work hourly. Well, it depends. I've worked both hourly and full time, where you get one flat salary every month, and I've worked. Well, most of the other situations I've worked, it has been billing, hourly billing. So you get paid for what you do. So that's pretty much how most of the contracts are.
But is it like, is it, oh God, I keep saying, like, my apologies. Is it more organized in the sense that if you, as you would know, if you work with somebody locally, whether Jamaica, Tobago, Trinidad, Barbados, or wherever, you oftentimes have to not just put on the hat of a programmer or developer, you may actually have to figure out some of the actual business procedures because they tend to not be properly documented, or what the case might be. Is it that these companies have everything kind of set up and they just say, hey, we need you to do this particular thing, we need this bug fixed, here's the source code, go? Is it like that? Or?
All right. Well, most of the places I've worked are actually like there are multiple people. So you'd have a project manager, and I'd be a part of a team. All right. So in fact, I've worked with places that had multiple project managers across multiple teams. So it's not like you're going to a small shop. Well, at least the ones I've been to. I mean, so you tend to fall into a role, which is a developer. But come to think about it, I have worked in the very beginning. I have worked in smaller shops, but the CEO or that person who take care of most of the business stuff. You're mostly worried about code. Yeah. So and if you do other stuff like documentation or so on, you still bill them the same rate you bill for coding.
Oh. I missed a point you may have made, because I'm getting that basically the arrangement is you work with other shops that do development rather than, say, working for a company that needs its internal products developed or something like that.
Right. What tends to happen, I get employed by another shop, and that shop is the one who finds the clients and then either just assigns me to the client or assigns me to a team that services the client. So a lot of the architecture and the planning and so on is done even before I start a project.
Okay. Now, that being said, you, in your opinion, is this remote work more cost effective than, well, I think I know your answer already, but is it more cost effective in terms of, like, I'm not talking about payment itself here, but I mean in terms of, well, I guess I am kind of talking about payment, but in comparison, comparing the income versus your expenses you rake up and that kind of thing, is this a more cost effective model than, say, going out and looking for clients locally and regionally and trying to do the whole thing by yourself and whatnot?
Well, from my experience, it definitely is. Yeah, the only issue is that you are now under someone else's control, for want of a better word. So, but especially working remotely, I've only worked remotely in the US, and I definitely get better returns. One, you get paid in foreign currency, so whatever negative fluctuations of the economy locally, you're kind of shielded from that. And it's people value software more in the places I've been, so you get value for your skills. So there are things that I would introduce to someone here to say, hey, you should do testing on your software. Yeah, and they'll be like, yeah, but how much would that cost? And they just would not value something like that. Where a more organized organizations would see the value in certain things that you wouldn't see locally. and they'd take the money and pay for it.
Yeah, I understand that completely. I know exactly what you're talking about there.
Well, on their side though, because like for example, I'm working on a project now with Lowe's, and the project saves Lowe's almost $1 million every year. So I mean, they can spend it, so you can you could understand why it would make sense. But for a local company, they wouldn't be making that amount of income or saving that amount of money. So it's kind of not justifiable for them to spend money on certain things. So I
well,
kind of understand.
well, actually, yes, because I've seen myself locally. You know, you just look at how. I mean, this is going to be controversial, but look, when I say locally, I mean in Trinidad and Tobago, because that's where my experience comes from.
Right.
You see outfits where they have a lot of redundant staff, in the sense that they are doing tasks that really could be better automated. And if you count up all the benefits that they pay to staff, especially if it's a unionized environment, you know, you realize the company is basically spending like $1 million and more dollars, TT of course, but $1 million and more dollars on staff that are
It could
basically
have been
doing
saved.
us.
True.
But we don't, yeah, but we don't really realize that much, especially in unionized environments. So that could be chaos on earth to touch with. So that's always something I keep in mind when I look at the growth of software development regionally. You know, the region is very much pro labor in some aspects. So there's a bit of a conflict that comes when a company tries to optimize, but you know, you have staff that would basically be left out in the rain. So, you know,
Yeah.
but that's another topic. Anyway,
Sure.
but curious, I'm curious about this. Have you ever been on a job working for doing remote work, and they say, well, hey, Rohan, meet this guy or meet this lady, and the person turns out to be from like Jamaica or Barbados or any other Caribbean island or something like that? Has that ever happened?
No, no. I've never met another Caribbean person. I've met a client who said they grew up in Jamaica, but I've never met another developer who's from the Caribbean. I've seen people from Central America, Europe, but I've never seen. Well, there's this one guy. He went to Haiti, but he was American, so that's the closest. He went to Haiti to live, but yeah, I never met anyone from the Caribbean.
Okay, hopefully that changes in the future.
Yeah.
I'm gonna throw to one question that we got, which I think you can answer top. But have you ever used the site Fiverr specifically?
No, I haven't. And just I said, I guess the issue is that because I came from consulting where I was already used to charging clients a particular rate. I guess I considered it too low and not a good use of my time to use Fiverr, because the projects I get in Fiverr will be
$5.
yeah. Some of them are more than $5, of course.
Yeah, I'm just being silly.
I didn't consider it a good use of my time to find development on Fiverr. But I wouldn't cross it out. I wouldn't cross out a Fiverr or Upwork, because if you're starting as a developer and you need a start, actually spending time coding is sometimes more important than just sitting down doing nothing, right? So if you get the opportunity to code and you're getting paid for it, then sure, go ahead.
Yeah. So one of the things I definitely get from you is that you, as a developer or remote developer as well, your time is very important, and you need to assess that before you go into any relationships with clients.
Yeah.
Right. Okay. So what kind of skills are companies looking for in remote development. Now I actually kind of monitor the job board from time to time to see what they're asking for, so I have an idea of what's going on. So, in your opinion, what kind of skills are you seeing that they're asking more and more for that companies are willing to outsource or subcontract?
Right. So whenever I give like talks on remote work, I always say, be a jack of all trades and a master of one. So
Right.
once you can consider yourself a master of one particular skill, it doesn't really matter what it is. Just get good at one thing, and then set up your resume to say, I'm a professional in this, and I know all these other skills. That is usually a better resume for remote work, because they tend to go out and ask for specific skills and technologies. You might hear full stack developer, but if you read it, you'll see full stack developer who knows Python, and they're actually focusing on a specific language. And then, okay, you should know Python, but ensure it's nice to know HTML and CSS and some stuff in the back end. But we need Python, so they need one particular skill. So just get good at one thing. I just happened to get good at Drupal, and it happened during the time that Drupal was like rising. So I got a lot of opportunities locally, and then those local projects and a lot of side projects that I did as well built up my skill level. So I was able to go into the remote market saying, hey, I know Drupal. So I was able to compete well on the market.
Okay, now let me ask you something about that then. What would you say to a developer like me now trying to get some remote work? I just like saying that.
Sure.
My background has been JavaScript in the past. It's still JavaScript. I do mostly TypeScript, but I'm more or less like backend Node.js, and I do a lot of stuff in the browser. Now, in my end of the programming spectrum, or my part of the whole ecosystem is probably one of the most chaotic, and there's a lot of hype in it as well. But it's just, there's always something, and there's always this thing that everybody is asking for every other week, and it's just like insanely hyped up. So what advice would you give to somebody like me to stay on top of your game in terms of remaining sensibly marketable to any company looking to subcontract?
All right. So as I said, especially with JavaScript, it changes like the weather. As you know, I remember the Drupal, they started off with the backbone JS and then underscore, and then by the time you check jQuery, and then from jQuery now it's now React. But the thing about it, if you call yourself a JavaScript developer, there are a lot of similarities between frameworks, right? Because one, they're all based on JavaScript. So if you're a JavaScript developer, be good at JavaScript. Drupal has gone through. I started Drupal when it was at 4.7. Drupal 4.7 is a total different beast from Drupal 8, right? So it's almost as if I changed my framework four times between Drupal 4 and 8. But there were fundamental skills that I learned in Drupal 4 that I carried over into Drupal 8. So it's just about, okay, finding what fundamental thing am I standing on, and then improve in the same vertical. So if you realize, okay, I spent all my time learning what was that old JavaScript framework, like Prototype. Right.
Oh, Prototype. I've been about that for a long time.
Right. Then stick to JavaScript, but okay, what's another stable JavaScript framework coming up in that seems to be taking a lot of getting a lot of word about it? Then learn it, and keep on doing Prototype, and if the Prototype opportunities dry up, you'll always have something to fall on, right? You might choose the wrong one, but you still have your JavaScript skills, right? And just keep sticking, but focus on one in particular. and strengthen your skills around that particular framework until it's no longer marketable, and then move on to the next one. But just always keep your focus on a main language or technology.
Yeah, I kind of agree, because I find myself often talking about my experience when I used to work for a full-time company, observing their internal developers working on COBOL, which I thought before that was like, something that you only hear about in like the programming history books.
Right, exactly.
But I actually met a guy who used to be a developer for one of those Wall Street banks. I mentioned that to him somehow in a conversation, and he told me, well, no, like they still have a lot of COBOL stuff. So it's not like nobody's gonna start and like literally millions of lines of code out there to be maintained. Behold, there are like these companies now that provide services transferring COBOL to Java. So, knowing a little bit of COBOL and knowing some Java actually comes in handy, because now you have something marketable about yourself. You could work on a COBOL code base and actually help with the progression to something like Java or C# or something like that. So, you just kind of adding to what you said there. What else we have on this rundown here? Give me a second. Okay, have you had any bad experiences doing remote work that you're willing to talk about?
Yeah, of course. It's just life, right? I've had quite a number of bad experiences. And that's one of the reasons when I'm choosing like remote opportunities, I tend to try to focus on ones that either are very cultured about remote work. I mean, it's a part of their culture, or they're a fully distributed company. Because companies that have some people working remote, or you can remote when you feel like, sometimes they haven't totally gotten the skill of managing remote workers, and managing information flow to remote workers, right? And I remember once I was I applied for a job as medium level developer at the time, and they put me to work with a lower level developer, right? Now the lower level developer was on site, and there were only two other remote workers at the company, myself and this guy from India. And so I think they were like experimenting with remote work to see how it would be. Now, it seems like the lower level guy, he didn't like the idea that I was probably being paid more than him or something. I don't know. So he would complain about everything I do. I'm like, hey, but it's not like I'm doing the stuff wrong. I don't know. And everyone at the company, they would have conversations, and they would come back to me with information. So it wasn't, the conversations that were happening about me weren't in my presence, because they would have their meetings, and then they'd come back to me with their outcomes, and I'd be like, that makes no sense, right? Because I'm not being involved in the information flow. And I eventually left because they wanted to reduce my rate. I'm like, no, thank you. And I left. So that is one bad experience I've had. I've had other bad experiences too, where I remember once I was hired to work as a developer, but then this client wanted to translate their site into different languages like Russian and Chinese, and they had me doing translation. So I was copying. Right, no, they had a Word document, and they had I built the translation interface, but they had me doing basically data entry. So I built a translation interface. There was original content, and they're like, okay, go through these hundreds of pages of translation and copy and paste.
That's ridiculous, though.
Oh. And it would take me like forever, and I would be charging them. Well, at the time it was $50 an hour to do copy and paste. So they got upset I was taking so long. I'm like, but this is not what I was paid to do. So it was, yeah. So that didn't end well.
That's interesting. That explains why there's often so many translation jobs as well on these outsourcing sites.
Right. So.
I just want to pause for a second to say that if anybody is watching, you can ask questions that you have for Rohan in the YouTube live chat box thing at the side. I think Natalie may be monitoring Facebook and whatnot, so you could ask your questions there as well. Rohan, I'm gonna ask you if you're willing to just give us a kind of crash course on how to, basically get yourself ready for remote work and then actually trying to find a job. I have some other questions before that though. One of those is, well, what's your opinion about, let's say, a couple individuals get together and decide to form a company that basically outsource its labor via remote work? Do you think that's a good idea?
Well, for the US market, that's what I planned to do when I just started remote work. I was going around and applying to these remote job positions as my company at the time. But the places I was going, they weren't looking for companies, because what would happen is they'd find the clients locally in the US. Excuse me. They'd find the clients in the US, and then they would now want, have contracts with these clients, and then hire developers who they can, pair with a project manager and, give tasks to complete. So it's not, most of the time the clients themselves aren't posting. It's the agencies that are posting.
Oh, right? Okay.
Right. So most of the jobs are for individuals. That's what I found. So I started applying as an individual, and that's where I got most success. I actually do not know how where do they find the clients, but I've been researching it because I'm thinking about, okay, if I were to transition from remote work, how would I do it? And I've been following this guy. I think his name is John Sonmez, right? And he's suggesting that, to move from this position of remote work to getting larger projects, you have to start, marketing yourself as a developer. So do a lot of writing, podcasts, publishing code, and I know a lot of developers don't like the idea of doing that, but that's the only way companies will see you as a developer and hire you, not necessarily through an agency, but hire you directly is when they can see your work or know of a certain that you're a good developer or a good company that does development. So that's probably the best way for us here in the Caribbean to probably reach companies overseas, is to create content that kind of shows your expertise and solve problems that people are facing. And then when they are like evaluating how can we solve this problem, they'll be like, oh, we know these people in the Caribbean who they do a good job at this, so let's hire them to do this. So that's I've never done it personally, but that's where I'm actually hoping to transition, instead of going through the middleman and go directly to the client.
Yeah, I don't know if you realize it or not, but that what you said there, actually, it would probably be the most important aspect of Caribbean Developer Week, actually, that whole creating content so the rest of the world can see. Because I've spoken with other people in the field who, do their thing, whether it's outsourcing locally or whatnot, and we all kind of recognize that that's going to be important if we want to attract those external potential clients and leads to look at us seriously, right, as I say, and not just see us as cheap labor. We don't want them to see us as cheap labor.
Right. Exactly.
They want to see this region as, in quotes, an innovative part of the world where you go to get really interesting and difficult things done. So I'm glad you mentioned that actually. If I could, that would have been the core theme of Caribbean Developer Week actually. That whole creating that content that attracts.
Yeah, but the thing is, you have to be doing interesting stuff. As I work in the remote work field, I realize, what separates us in the Caribbean from, a lot of people in Silicon Valley or wherever you find like good software developers is that they get to work on interesting stuff. And a lot of times we don't have those interesting projects to work on because one, there's nobody around us funding it. So the next best thing is side projects. You do your own personal side projects and open source projects as well.
Yeah,
get involved in real world projects where you get to do high level coding on interesting problems, because that's the only way you'll be able to improve your skills. And you'll get with open source projects, you get code review from really good developers, and code review is probably one of the fastest ways to improve your skill. So that's what my encouragement is to keep working on projects, keep like sharpening your skills. Don't sit down and wait for work. And I mean, when I was a developer in the Caribbean, most of my Jupyter projects were front end projects. I mean, you go to Photoshop, you design something, or get somebody to design something, and you slice it up and drop in CSS and HTML and some JavaScript. That's sometimes as complex as the projects would get, right? So you don't really get to do real intense, like brain breaking type of development. So to do that, what I had to do is do my own personal projects, where I to get myself exposed to the level of development that I wanted to do. I'd have to create my own problems and solve them. So that's what I suggest.
Any personal projects you want to mention, actually, by chance?
Well, I what projects? My most recent projects. Well, right now I'm learning a new programming language, Dart and Flutter. So I actually have an app in the App Store that I just do it for the purpose of learning, because I built it first to learn Ionic framework, and then I'm now transitioning from Ionic framework to Flutter. So it's an hymnal app, SDA hymnal app for the App Store. I've written this thing in Python recently too. That Facebook had this thing where when it just came out, the large text on the Facebook posts. I was like, one day, why not animate that text? It'd be so cool to have that text animated. So I got some Python libraries and started coding some for that as well. But I don't do mobile apps in my day job. I don't do Python in my day job. So these were opportunities for me to, one, get exposed to other technologies, and two, to do complex, because that animation thing with the videos, you have to be doing calling up functions to do animations, like mathematical functions, sine, cosine, transforms, right? And those are stuff I would never encounter in a web project. Well, rarely, right? Unless I'm doing something with D3 or something. I mean, it is not in the scope, but it allows me to stretch my mind and learn technologies beyond what I'm exposed to on a daily basis.
Okay, so I'll just check any time here. We have 11 more minutes.
Sure.
I really want to give you the opportunity to give the breakdown, as well as talk a little bit about you want to talk about the group today, or you want to?
Well, I mean, it's not a lot of activity happening there, so
okay,
it's fine.
But after get this, we have about 4 questions piled up here. So let me just ask these questions. It's 3 actually. Kendall asks, agile development, is this required for remote development?
Yeah, it's most of the companies, probably 90% of the companies I've worked with have some form of agile. It's not always strict in a lot of them, But a lot of the software they use, say for example, Jira, it's built around agile. You have your sprints and you burn down charts and all of this stuff. So it's mostly agile. For especially when you hire developers, you hire them and you say, okay, these are the tasks that I want to complete in this short period of time, and you get them done.
Oh, so you should be familiar with that before you.
Well, you don't have to. I mean, I personally read upon it, just to get an idea as to exactly what it is. But I mean, I just read like a 20-page document, and I was fine.
Okay. Okay. How, or rather, where did you assess your skills to gauge your competence for remote jobs? Example, applying for a senior position as opposed to a junior position. So I guess he's asking, how do you distinguish what level you are at before you apply for a job?
It's really what you think about yourself, to be honest. It's really what you think about yourself. And I guess I just have probably a high self-esteem.
Yeah.
And you just have to just go as high as you think you can go, and then people will respond to the energy you put out. I mean, if I compared the level I am at now to where I was 5 years ago, I'd just say you are so brave, saying that you are a senior developer back then, right? I just laugh at the code I had right back then. But I just put out the energy to say, hey, I can build a site. I can do some stuff with PHP. I'm a senior developer, right? And I wrote my resume to reflect that. I mean, I've seen people who with far better skills than I have with horrible resumes. So I just wrote what I felt would portray a senior developer. I just gave out that energy and people responded. And you also be surprised that the skill that you think is considered senior is probably not as... I mean, where you are now is probably senior than most other developers that they'll encounter. So just go with a lot of self-confidence and it will pay off. Trust me, it will.
Okay, remember that, ladies and gentlemen, self-confidence is very important.
Yeah.
So the last question I have here would actually send us into a breakdown of how you go about acquiring remote work. I'm a self-taught developer. This is Kendall again. So I'm technically not qualified for jobs, but I have experience. How do you think I should approach seeking remote jobs? So you could just kind of give us the, what they call it, 12,000-foot view of getting yourself organized and actually attempting to acquire remote jobs and whatnot.
All right. As a self-taught developer, I mean, in the software world, it really does not matter all that much. Whether you're university taught. I mean, some people like it, but it's not a big deal. What's important is evidence of your work. Say if you're a Python guy, show me some evidence that you know the stuff you're talking about. It doesn't even mean code. It can just mean I write a lot about Python. For me, I remember when I was just getting to remote work, I knew some stuff about Drupal. So what I did, I went to Stack Overflow and I just started answering a bunch of Drupal questions. Like I did that for a week. And I raised my score up to like 300, I think, in a week. And the very next week, a guy hired me and said, I was looking through your Stack Overflow account and it looks really nice, And that's just an evidence to show that I knew what I was talking about when I was answering Drupal questions. And just do things that people will... Just as I was telling you about how can you have clients look at you, do things so when the employees look at you, they believe, they can think that you know what you're doing. So that's the thing with remote work is that they don't have you on site, so they need to have all the evidence. So you need to create that web presence to show them that I understand my skill, I understand my field, and I'm a senior in my craft. So it's a lot of bluffing, I guess.
Well, I wouldn't call it bluffing, but
yeah.
I think that's a very valid point. You know, you create a presence where people look at you. I mean, at the end of the day, if things go bad, you don't want the employees who recommend they hire you don't want management saying why you hired this guy. I can't find anything about this guy or girl. There's nothing online. You know,
Yeah.
where you found this person. You know, at least they could seems to have a public reputation of doing this stuff.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So yeah, sorry, go on. So what comes after you build up your public reputation or your public your online image as a developer and whatnot? What's the next step?
Right. So after you built your online reputation, then you need to format your resume to represent that. Right. Just ensure that you have the best representation of your skills. I always say list every single thing you've ever known. Right. I've never coded Ruby, but I remember I was going through Chef. I think Chef is a backend software.
I think it's the orchestra thing.
Right. And I had to do some Chef configuration, and it so happened to be written in Ruby, right? And these are just configuration files. So I put Ruby on my resume because I now know how to use Ruby, right? Because I had to learn the basic syntax. But the way my resume is, I say, okay, I'm really good at this. I know this, you know, and I've had experience with this. So it kind of broadens my scope of skills, and it portrays me as someone who, you know, can learn when I need to learn new things, right? So have this main skill that you're known for. So I'm a Python developer, I'm a JavaScript developer, and then what are the supporting skills for these? And show me all the evidences that can claim that you are a JavaScript developer. You know, what are the evidence online that I can use to reference to say, you know, a good JavaScript developer would have done this or would have written this. And it doesn't have to be code. It can just be a blog post. It can be Stack Overflow questions. It can be just comments on GitHub or something. I mean, just presence and content. And from there, just send out applications to the jobs that are looking for that particular skill. I used to say, you know, send out 1 million applications and then see what sticks. But after a time, you realize that, you know, that's not necessarily the best approach. Just get the vertical you want. Say, I'm going out for all JavaScript jobs. Set my resume for JavaScript and apply to JavaScript jobs. You know, and apply to. I use the site I like to use is remoteok.io. Peter Lills, I think, built that site. It goes across a lot of job boards and pulls out the remote ones. So that's remoteok.io, and it usually has a lot of job posts posted there.
So let me ask you this then. So it's a bad idea. Is it a bad idea to just reach out to companies at random, like just send your resume to them, even though they don't have like a job posting?
I'd say you can, but do it in a way where you're giving them value. So for example, you want to work for a company that does JavaScript. Write a blog post about, okay, the top JavaScript companies that hire remote workers, right? And you reference them, to tag them in social media, so they know who you are, right? So that's you going without begging, you know. So you're offering value to them, and say, okay, this person offering value to us. Who is he or who is she? And that then they'll come and they'll look up your profile, and someone in the company will probably get familiar with you. So now, 2 months down the line, you come back and say, hey, you know, I am a JavaScript developer. I do this. I'm wondering if you have any openings. And now you're not coming in as a cold developer. You're coming in with experience, so to speak, because they know who you are and they know what work you've been doing because you've been mentioning them. So yeah.
Okay. All right. Right quick, because we're a little bit over.
Sure.
Remote developer. Well, Facebook's cross over the Facebook forum group. You want to still kind of plug it a little bit?
Oh well, a couple years ago, I realized remote software development was was gonna be the thing, right? I mean, I checked Google Trends and I realized it was increasing. So I say, hey, there's nowhere online for remote software developers to like ask questions and hang out. So I created a remote software developer group. It worked really good at the beginning, but Facebook with their algorithm started, kind of working against what I wanted the group to focus on. So questions will get lost in timeline and so on. So I'm actually working to create a forum. So I'll be transitioning from the Facebook group to a forum where you'll be able to go and ask questions that you asked me today about remote software development and get answers. And hopefully I'll be able to form a community there. So if you're interested, just sign up with the Facebook remote software developer group. And once it's ready, you'll know as I transition to that site.
Okay. 1 second. I'm getting a voice in my ear. Okay, I'm getting a question. I'm not too sure what the question is. I think I'm being asked to ask you how clients track your hours of work or something like that.
Oh, right. So the thing about time tracking is that you are responsible for tracking your time. So a client would the ones I worked with, they would give you the project manager would work with you and say, okay, I have these tasks. Give me an estimate as to how long you think this would take, and you give an estimate. And based on the estimate, you put in your hours. You might go below, you might go above. It's just really trying to, especially when you're new, it's trying to understand how the project is. But most people aren't very they're not watching over your shoulder to say, you went 5 minutes overtime. I've gone like 16 hours overtime on some tasks because at first glance it wasn't what it seemed to be. But in the process, you speak to the project manager or whoever you're working with, or the client you're working with, and say, hey, I'm in the middle of this project, this task, but this needs a whole lot of work, and you bill accordingly.
Communication is important.
Yeah. Don't ever go do 16 hours and then come back and hey, yes, I did. I said it was 3 hours, but you have to be communicating. To be a good remote software developer, over communicating is essential. You have to over communicate on every front, because even if you're a hardworking developer and you communicate a lot, it will look better on your side. So I'd suggest communication.
Well, Rohan, I could ask you a million questions at this point, because that part is also interesting as well. I'll give the chat room one last chance to ask any questions before we wrap this up, because I think this one, people are really extracting value from it. I need to actually look at the chat room first. So I'm not seeing much activity anymore. So would you like to share any social media or public website or anything with people where they could check you out and see what you do and stalk you on the internet and whatnot?
Well, there's the remotesoftwaredeveloper.com site, remotesoftwaredeveloper.com. Yeah, I snagged that URL. So you can use that to get to the Facebook page. I'm on Twitter as well, so it's Frazras, F-R-A-Z, like Frazzle, Frazras, R-A-S, Rohan Anthony Smith, right? At Twitter, so you can follow me there. I post all kind of crazy stuff there. So you can always get me on Twitter. So once you message me on Twitter, I'll respond.
Okay, great. Well, Rohan, thank you very much for doing our first and only interview in Caribbean Developer Week, I think. This went pretty good. Much more value than I could have hoped for. Keep doing your thing with the remote developer group, and let's talk more. Let's be more community oriented with all of these things, because I think in the long run, I think a lot of us have like same or similar goals.
Yeah.
Because yeah, we all trying to basically get that industry either, you know, internally or get that external reputation, so that's easier for all of us to do what we do. So yeah, man, good work, and keep doing it.
Yeah.
Thanks for coming up.
Yeah, and I just want to say, you know, a lot of software developers are in the Caribbean, and you might not think you have the skills or the expertise to work remotely. You know, trust me, we are more talented than many of the software developers overseas. I was that was my biggest surprise just going in. You know, I thought, you know, I was from Jamaica, the small island in the Caribbean. You know, I know some PHP and stuff, but I wouldn't be able to compete. But some of these guys do nothing, right? And you're like, I can't believe they don't know that, you know. So don't underestimate yourself. Just go out, be confident, you know, just punch above your weight class, and just value yourself and work on your craft, and you'll get success.
You know, I was going to mention this, but I forgot. Just a quick funny experience of mine. I actually not too long ago attempted to apply for a remote position because the company was using like it was like one of those financial companies, and they were using not Clojure, not Haskell, but one of those functional libraries. I think it was OCaml or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
And I applied, and I think I got turned down in like 5 minutes or something like that. So that was pretty eye-opening for me. But it's probably some kind of automated system. But you know,
yeah, there are issues I didn't address here with regards to you know, certain people only hire in the US, or you know, you have to have a green card or some, yeah. So there are a lot of hurdles to get over when we're working in the States. But I mean, just try and it'll work. I've never been out of a remote job for more than 3 months for the past 5 years, and I've gone through a couple. So just there's work there.
Yeah, that's a good rate. So if you have experiences like mine, you could always look up Rohan's remote developer group forum when it's launched and whatnot. So thanks again, Rohan, and thanks everybody who came out and took part in yet another broadcast of Caribbean Developer Week.
Mm-hmm.
We have more sessions for you tomorrow, 3 more, and then the big one on Saturday, the sit down where we try and get as much people as we could fit on Hangouts talking about software development issues. The next session is going to be titled, it's going to be another soft skills kind of one. Get my calendar here. It's not about ones and zeros, the skills required to be a good software developer. This is by, I hope I'm pronouncing his name correctly, Tremaine, I think, Buchanan. Okay. Oh, you know him, Rohan?
Yeah, he was a classmate in high school.
Okay. Yeah.
Right.
So that's gonna be tomorrow, and we have 2 other sessions after that. Learning your value as a team player with Ainsworth Spence, and then after that in the afternoon it's gonna be PWA is the next generation of the web. So all you people talking about progressive web apps, you're not going to want to miss that. That's going to be with Nicholas Mendez. So yeah, we hope to see you tomorrow. Take care.
All right.